I'm never going to get used to that.
Welcome to another Monday of
No one gets away with anything.
Today we are
Jose Rafael Ochoaneri and
Ariana Lopez. So we're back to usual now.
back to the usual now. We're not mixing everything up this time. We're getting used to we're coming back to now we're coming back to recording.
To our
it's not
roots.
totally new. It's not
Fair
like
enough.
it's the same day.
Now I got used to it.
Yeah.
Second time it's the charm.
It's
I know it's a third.
So now this episode will now go horribly wrong. Nada más porque Ariana dijo second time's the charm.
Okay, Jose, please explain us what we're going to talk about today.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about my healthiest obsession, I would say. Probablemente no todo el mundo estaría de acuerdo conmigo.
I don't think the word obsession you can link to healthy. So,
True. See, my biggest idol in terms of intellectual things is my man, Jordan B. Peterson. And he has a book called Beyond Order that I just finished reading. Y Ariana me ha preguntado varias veces como que I have posters in my room with all of the rules. And she's like, but what does this mean? And I was like, that's a perfect idea for an episode. How long ago was that, Ariana?
We're not going to reveal the details of our brainstorming.
It was 20 seconds ago. Sorry. No, it was a bit ago. But...
Okay, but so for you to have some context, I hadn't come to Jose's house, like...
Since we were furnishing it.
Since you were furnishing it. So, like, the last time I came, everything was in boxes and there was barely, like, a couch,
like, I was
some
building...
chairs.
I was, like, literally IKEA building my bed.
Exactly. So, today I came for the first time and I come into Jose's room and now he has all this pile of books. Most of them are from Jordan Peterson, at least, like...
No, I have one book.
You have, like, one or two.
Like, the
I
other
just
one I
feel
have
like
digital. All of them are that style of book where it's, like that one that you have under Why Nations Fail, which is... The Loss of Human Nature by Robert Greene. It's the same kind of book, you know, explaining the psychology of something. Or this one is called Snoop, what people, your stuff says about you, and it's a book about, you know, the psychology of your stuff. I like those books.
Exacto. Entonces, yo llego al cuarto de Jose and it's beautiful. And like a normal person would have like a bunch of pictures and maybe some artworks. Y Jose tiene un póster de un panda.
It has a story.
Then you have like a little painting.
Yes, a painting that my girlfriend made for me.
Exacto. And then he has 12 papers with the 12 rules for life. Is that how they
the 12 more rules for life. And they are all like, they're on my closet, like ordered in a cool way.
So I was like, I'm going to test this guy and I'm going to ask one by one what they are. So I just stood in front of his closet like this. Rule number 1. And he was like, no. Rule number 2. And he said them all. And I was like, well, what do they even mean? So,
I told him, like, look, like this would take like a 40-minute conversation for me to explain what all those rules mean.
And then we're better to talk about it than...
Where do I have 40 minutes of people's undivided attention than a podcast is?
We hope so, at least.
Yes. So, for those of you who don't know, Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist. I will tag him in this episode. If you ever do watch this, Jordan, I love you. He's a clinical psychologist from Canada. My dad's a guest today. He's watching us for the first time, and he just said, "Me too." You know, the point is, Jordan Peterson. He's a clinical psychologist. He's from Canada, and he's been basically, you know, using his experience as a college professor, as a clinical psychologist, and put it into practice. And he became famous rather for a couple of things: his YouTube channel, and for some controversy with a compelled speech legislation in Canada. The point being, he became very, very, very famous, and he has had 3 books so far. Maps of Meaning, which not a lot of people read. It's about the narrative of life. It's very, está muy lleno de psicología junguiana, and it's a very difficult book to read. And then what he says is that he condensed those 2 books into 2 more readable books, and they are 12 Rules for Life and An Antidote to Chaos, which is his first book, and this is the second book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. As you can see, my version of it is very banged up because Ariana jokes that my look is jeans, shirt, book bag, and a book in my hand.
Yeah. The other day, I was waiting for Jose, like we met at a place, like the day of the job interview.
Oh, yeah.
And then I arrived way earlier than he did. And he arrives like right on time and stuff. And he comes running from the subway. He has his backpack and stuff. And he has this humongous book in his hand. And I'm like, of course. Otherwise, it wouldn't be him.
It wouldn't be me if I didn't have a book. Like, if I don't have a book on me, it's because I'm watching Jordan Peterson on my phone.
Exactly. Or because his mind is somewhere else.
Yeah, that can be it too. Because I have a long commute and I try to read. And so Jordan Peterson touches on a lot of stuff. And the first thing you need to understand is the concept of order and the concept of chaos.
Okay.
So every single civilization that has existed has these drawings where there's a tree. And around the tree is a river, and near the river are the humans.
Okay.
And so that's like the canonic civilization. You know, the sun's in the corner. That's little drawings. Like you can see a little kid draw that today, and it would seem totally normal. And there's also like the Aztecs had that written, like and many other cultures did. And so Jung and Freud take this explanation as something like that represents the basis of any human realm. You know, there's light, which is the river, the tree, and the humans, which is what we know. That's called order. And then there's chaos, and chaos is everything that you don't know. Okay. So Jordan Peterson, in his writings and everything, and especially on his YouTube channel, he talks a lot about movies, like Pinocchio, and he tells you how these movies are, you know, the representation of these grand narratives between order and chaos. Okay. The point is that human beings live somewhere in the middle of it. Okay, we don't know exactly where. Like, if you have too much order, you have OCD, and if you have too much chaos, you have schizophrenia. So we functional human beings live in the middle of that, and that's what these two books are about. We're gonna focus on the second one because I don't have the first one on me right now.
And because the ones that are pasted in your room are the second one.
Yes,
so I'm going to guess they have a special meaning to you.
Yes, they do. Because I am a very orderly person. I am in his... this book actually turned me onto that, which is the ocean model of... I've told you about this. The ocean model of personality, where it's openness to experience, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, and neuroticism. Okay, every single human being has this. It's like a statistical way of knowing what your personality looks like. Okay.
Oh, but that's very interesting.
It's pretty interesting, and you can do it. Like Jordan has a product which is a test that tells you more or less what your personality is like. And I'm a pretty conscientious person.
I agree.
Conscientious being it's
overly careful about everything that goes on in your life.
Yes, so it's detail oriented, and it's also willing to work a lot.
And planning.
Yes, so detail oriented is like planning, strategy, etc. And then work related is just how hard you can just sit down and do something. Okay, and it's the biggest predictor for success in the world. Okay, but people that tend to be very conscientious also happen to be the kind of people that get very anxious in life. Like you and me, we get into 12,000 million things to do at the same time. And we end up by the end of the week, like biting our nails off out of the anxiety.
And the thing is, our week ends Sunday, 10 at evening. And then it starts again on Monday, 6 in the morning.
Yeah. It's
our
crazy.
Weekend is basically the night of sleep between Sunday and Monday.
Like the shower you take when you're just like too exhausted and you just need to really just chill, and you get in the shower and the shower is cold and it gets hot because you're just so anxious. So yeah.
Bueno,
Básicamente.
Enlighten us.
So what I want you to do is flip through it and tell me the rules. Like read to me the rules and I explain what it means, or what I remember at least.
I'm gonna do my best to find them super fast though. Okay. Rule number 1. Do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievement.
Okay, so this one basically goes... It's the Fool, right? Yeah, the picture.
Yeah, the Fool.
Okay, so each chapter has accompanied with an image. Okay, there was a really good illustrator. I don't remember the name. Yeah, that tried to illustrate what his chapters were. And so the Fool is the spirit of the person who does not mind being an amateur. So, for example, my dad's a plastic surgeon, and one of the things that happens when you're a plastic surgeon is that you spend your entire life studying. You can't stop studying because medicine keeps growing, and if you stop growing with medicine, you stay behind. So, doctors, especially doctors that do the cutting-edge medicine, tend to be the ones who are more prone to allowing themselves to be amateurs. Si tú no sabes jugar al fútbol y pretendes que vas a meter un golazo, el primera vez que tocas la pelota, you're going to have a really bad time. It's more about understanding that there's a framework and a set of things that you need to do before you can learn to do something. Okay? So what he talks about denigrating social institutions is that we are playing a game.
Okay.
In a way.
As in life.
Exactly. So life is a game. And if you don't allow yourself to be stupid and ask the stupid questions like, oh, should I, if you come live in Spain, porque a todos nos ha pasado, ¿dónde boto la basura? Porque no sé dónde va esta basura. Si no lo haces, capaz te llega una multa a tu casa. We're playing a sort of game.
Okay. I see what you mean.
And then what he's saying is do not carelessly denigrate creative achievement, porque muchas veces nos pasa que vemos un podcast o vemos como Miley Cyrus canta Jolene y decimos, claro que no, eso no es ella, that's like auto-tune or something. Y es como que you are denigrating the creative achievement of someone. And that creative achievement is essential for society. Y social institutions are created by, you know, rigorous work. O sea, tener una institución social como puede ser, you know, botar basura en el right bin took a lot of work. And if you denigrate it in one day, you can be doing a lot more damage than you think. So that's rule one. What do you think?
I can relate a lot because I think it has to do with what we talked like last episode. We're people who are used to doing things right, and we love succeeding, and succeeding is usually linked to the idea that you got something right and you're progressing in that thing, right? So at least for me, it's very hard to acknowledge that I did something wrong and to learn from that which I did wrong and then, you know, improve next time. So I think it's a very basic, important understanding of what we should do.
True. The other thing is that there's this component of it all, which is something like you are a person who likes to do things right. And it's the point of the chapter is something like you need to be the fool and you need to understand the institutions that you're in so you can break the rules later if you
it's
need
like what
to.
we said at some point. It's in order to play the game properly, not only you have to just play, but also it's better if you know how to explain the rules, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Like, you need to be able to play enough that you can explain the rules, but also it's o sea, va más o menos de que tú te fuiste de tu casa. Like, your game, in a way, if you want to put it in a way, like a psychologist could say that you were a person who liked to please her parents.
Exacto.
And so that's why you were so good in school, or like to please yourself, or whatever. But the point is, una de las razones por las que tú fuiste tan buena en el colegio es porque you liked to be a goody two-shoes. And then when you graduated and you had the choice whether to stay or leave, the choice that would have made your parents the happiest would have been if you stayed. Yet you knew the rules. You knew how the game was played enough that you said, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to risk something else. That's the fool. It's being the fool until you're not.
Exacto. I think immigrants, y también como que we often speak about, you know, how our lives and how most of our important experiences are shaped because we left our home.
Yeah.
Y esto tiene mucho que ver con eso. Because sometimes you just want to catch up. You don't want to be seen as the one that's left behind or like the fool. You know, you don't want to be seen as the immigrant. You want to be seen as someone who has all the right to live in a country that's not where you were born. And not only that you have the right, it's like you earn the right because you understand how it works. But in order to understand, you first have to not understand.
Yeah.
But we just want to skip that part. Exactly. Well, let's go to rule number 2 now then.
Yeah.
Imagine who you could be and then aim single-mindedly at that.
Okay, so, well, there's a really good story from Warren Buffett.
Okay.
He says he's giving advice to these like young, how do you call that?
Like financial investor.
To this financial investor. Y está básicamente hablando con él y le dice como que, okay, escríbeme en una lista las 10 cosas que más quisieras hacer en tu carrera. Tipo, estas son las 10 cosas que tipo, I want to do. And he's like, you know, he spends a good 30 minutes thinking about it and he writes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He writes, and the last one he's like doubting. He's like, oh, what would this be like? What would, He writes the last one. And then, this is the interesting part. He finishes writing the last one. Y Warren Buffett lo agarra y le dice, I want you to cross out everything after number 3.
Just focus on those 3?
just focus on the first 3, because everything that you didn't put above 3rd place is a waste of time for you.
Fair enough.
And that's it. I mean, it's a simple one, but it seems simple, but it's not. It's like, okay, read it again, the rule. It says?
Imagine who you could be.
Okay, exactly. So who do you want to be? Do you want to be a good person or a bad person?
You want to be good.
Okay, so if you want to be a good, okay, let's imagine you want to be a bad person. If you want to be a bad person, how do you do that? What you have to think about is, what transformation of me could bring the most bad into the world?
Okay.
So the opposite is also true. If you want to be a good person, it's not only being a good person, but what version of me would bring the best to the world?
Also, like the other day, I watched a podcast where they interviewed Kendall Jenner. It was and she was explaining, like, for those of you who don't know, she's very famous, like international model, like supermodel. And
I think everybody knows who Kendall
Jenner is.
Well,
but just in case, for a bit of context, right?
You're so nice. Out there for the people that don't know who she is.
I think she began working.
My dad.
Exactly. You see, I am being considerate, empathic, understanding.
My dad, like, I don't know who that girl is.
Okay, so she became a model, I think, when she was 19, and she's sister of the Kardashians, right? So she already came from a very overstimulating, famous environment, but she built her own way to be a supermodel, and she was genuinely very famous. But she was telling the story of how, like, she was so grateful for everything that she had achieved and she was worked on, that it was very hard for her to say no. Like, to reject an offer from, I don't know, a fashion show or like a brand that wanted her to be their image, right? And there was a point where she reached her limit and she collapsed. Like, her mental health was really a risk. And she was saying, like, she's at a point in her life now where she's going more of an easy mode in the sense of, like, she's taking care of herself. And she was explaining how it's very easy to self-sabotage, especially in the area in which she was. And her therapist often tells her, like, look at yourself as if you're a goddess. What's the ultimate goddess that you could be? So when you feel that way, just remember that it doesn't matter what other people think or what other people do, as long as you're doing everything that you can to become that goddess version of yourself. Yeah. It's like, also it helps you, like, get rid of the unnecessary noise that you have from your environment, even if every once in a while it's going to come back, because you're focused on your potential and you have a clear goal of where you want to go.
Yeah, the other thing, and it's something like similar to what you were talking about, that when we were little, we were the kind of people who loved to do things right. Sometimes there's a very different, a very small difference, especially for people like you and me, that we don't notice the difference between actual achievement and people pleasing.
Totalmente.
Pasa mucho. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you become good at something. That's why it says, imagine who you could be and then aim single-mindedly at that. It's not just be good, and he says it a lot. One of Jordan Peterson's most famous phrases is, don't be a man, be a monster.
Wow.
And it's because if you're a normal person, if you're just good, if you're just aiming to be good, then you don't threaten anyone. And you and I both study international relations. In international relations, there's a theory called realism.
I'm just studying that right now.
Yeah.
I just had a class yesterday about it.
I studied it before a little bit, and we're going, like, deep into it right now. But basically, realism says that if I have a bigger gun than you, I can toy around with you.
Sí, total.
And so the thing is, if you're good and also know how to be, like, a monster is a person who's capable of violence. Let's put it that way. So if you're good, but you're also capable of violence, then you're an integrated human being. You're the kind of person who can take hold, tipo, puedes agarrar tu destino y decir, no importa que tú tengas una pistola grande,
I have a bigger one. Okay.
No, capaz no tengo una más grande que tú, pero me voy contigo, dale, pues, inténtalo. And then people don't mess with you. Entonces, ese es el puntico en el que being a people pleaser no sirve. Es como que if you're a people pleaser and somebody points at you with a gun, you stand down. And you say, well, I'm sorry, etc. If you're not a people pleaser and people, te vienen con una pistola, tú dices, tengo 4. ¿Cómo hacemos?
Bueno, tengo cosas que decir al respecto. La primera, siento que, por ejemplo, en el mundo artístico, or when you're producing something for somebody else, you're giving a service, or like, for example, what we do, right? There's a very fine line between people pleasing and doing a good job, because in the end, the response that you get is an indicator of the quality of the work that you're doing. So it's very tricky because it depends on the type of content that you make, who are you aiming for.
Yeah, but there's a danger of a positive feedback loop.
Claro, y ahí, o sea, siento que for example, for me, it's very hard to like tell the difference between, and for artists in general, y por ejemplo lo que le pasaba a Kendall Jenner, I suppose it's like, pleasing people is a part of you doing a good job. Entonces, por ejemplo...
Okay, like people can be pleased by the job you do, but your job shouldn't be to please people.
Exacto. I know, tienes toda la razón, pero digo que I think it's particularly tricky in situations like those.
Yeah, definitely. Pero por eso es, o sea, the rule, wow, we did a big... The rule, that's why it says aim, like, imagine who you could be first. Sí. So, whenever I imagine this, I imagine myself as like a father, a brother, and then a husband, a son, and then everything else. And then it's like, yeah, and then an employee or a boss. And then, you know, like a member of my community, and then like a member,
famous podcaster.
I'm a famous, I don't think I'm going to be a famous podcaster.
Oh,
I'm going to be the famous.
As long as there's space for two people, I accept.
Always have space for you, my friend.
I'm glad. But yeah, and for example, I was talking to my boyfriend the other day because he was talking about his music to me and how that's very...
He does music,
He
right?
does music, yeah, he does music. And that's something very important for him. You remember us, like, we were speaking about what things were, like our little islands in the middle of the chaos of our oceans,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
For him, doing his music, it's that. But he does it on his own, right? And he was telling me how during the summer, he met a lot of people from del medio. How do you say that?
Like that do the same thing that he does?
Yeah, that do the same, like they do video clips. From the industry, right? And somebody told him like, yeah, you can be doing fine, but you're forgetting that you're doing that for yourself in the first place. And that's what makes you unique. And the moment in which you just stop doing your music for yourself and you start doing it for others, then the whole thing loses a point, because first, you're going to stop enjoying it as much as you do now. And second, the people who like what you do like it because it's also something that you enjoy. And the moment in which you change that, you also lose the ground that you had. I thought it was beautiful because he told me, like, I was about to forget that I did it for myself. And if I'd stopped, then it wouldn't make sense anymore. And it has a lot to do with this, you know?
No, it reminds me of the podcast, because we were not going to record this season. We weren't going to post this season on YouTube. We were sitting down about to record an episode like we always do, and then was like, this would be cool. And that's so us. Just the idea just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, the thing is, like, we try to planning, and
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
We don't.
But
like,
while we try to execute the plan, we come up with a different one that ends up being 100 times better.
Yes,
but
always.
It works.
It always ends up being better.
Pero por lo menos, tipo, by trying to do something else, we figure out what we wanted to do in the first place.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, next rule.
Rule number 3. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. I think I need to, like, I should have read this last year.
Yeah, this one is really... This is the most difficult one. I think this is the thing that most people struggle with. And this is the thing about Peterson. He tells you things you don't want to hear, but you're like, damn, I needed to hear that.
That's why people don't like him also.
It's probably why people don't like him too. It's like he
puts his shit in your face.
I think this chapter would explain most of why he gets so much criticism. And it's because he does not hide unwanted things in the fog. Like, he has an opinion that might not be popular. Like, he was... the first time he became popular was because of the C-16 bill in Canada, which meant that if you misgendered someone, you could go to jail.
Okay.
And you could receive financial
punishment
and penalties. And his point was like, look, I have the utmost respect for people who have different gender, identifications, and if I respect someone, I call them that, like whatever they ask me to, but the government shouldn't. Like, the government shouldn't have the authority to control my tongue. And then it's an issue that people just don't really want to talk about because it's uncomfortable. It's, freedom of speech and the kind of thing that most people in general
it's very ironic.
It's very ironic because it's like...
By trying to make people more free, you're actually making them more...
And this is what this rule talks about. So what the fog does is that you have had that moment in your life when you're about to say something that you know is a lie and you say it anyway. That's the fog. Whenever you're like, maybe I shouldn't be watching my phone while my girlfriend is getting to bed because she probably wants to talk to me, but I'm just going to pretend like I didn't notice her and I'm just going to keep looking at my phone. Or maybe I should start studying today, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to play the guitar because it's kind of productive, but it's not really what I need to be doing right now. And it makes me feel good enough that I can justify it.
See.
That's the fog.
So I want to procrastinating, but it's also like the weird part, and it's something that I heard him say the other day is, who do you think that idea comes from? Like, who do you think is talking when you lie? Because you're not talking. You're possessed by the lie. The lie is the thing that is living through you. But then it's you also. No.
You think it's you. But then you're living the life of the person who would, for example, not work. And you become that person. I mean, you end up becoming that. But you are still in there. Like, there's a part of you, a real big part of you, que no vive eso.
Oh my God. I don't like to hear that.
¿Verdad? Nadie le gusta escuchar esto. Pero es muy real. Entonces, basically what he says is, empieza por no mentir. O sea, no necesariamente...
Y no mentirte.
Pero o sea, sí. Es que exactamente, es no decir... O sea, tú te puedes creer tus propias mentiras. Porque lo que él dice también, una de las cosas que él más... that he makes most emphasis on, es que tienes que tener steps that you're able to climb.
Okay.
Porque si tú te pones unos pasos que son muy grandes para ti, you're going to fail and you're never going to do it. You're never going to want to do it again. Entonces lo que él dice es, okay, está bien que tú tengas problemas muy grandes de los cuales tú te sientas anestesiado por tus mentiras. Okay? Again, te estás dando la libertad para seguir viviendo tu vida al costo de que te va a costar más después. O sea, no, it's not... He says that lying is like grabbing the fabric of reality and doing like this.
Okay.
The name of this podcast comes from that phrase. And he says, you can grab the fabric of reality, you can do like this, but no one gets away with anything.
It comes back to you. It's a cycle.
It comes back and it bites your ass. And so what he says is, look, start by not lying to anyone. Like, not saying any lie. Like, if you're about to lie, catch yourself, and you can say a partial truth. You can shut up. You can anything. But try to notice how many times you lie. And after you spend 2 weeks without lying, try only saying truthful things. Really truthful. Like, for example, I saw this the other day. I think it was Simon Sinek. And he was saying, a friend of mine invited me to a play, to her first play, and the play was the worst thing I've ever seen. But there's moments to be truthful. You don't have to be truthful every single second of every moment of life. You have moments where you say truth. And so when she got off stage, I said, oh my God, I loved seeing you on stage. I can see how much passion you have. I'm so happy for you.
He never lied.
All those things are true. Yeah. And then the next day, he called her up and he said, look, do you want to talk about the play? And she says, yes, what did you think about it? And he said, okay, you're not going to like this. This is what I thought of the play. And he told her, look, I think that you're a great, great actor, but the play was a stinking pile of crap. And he never, ever, in that sense, changed his morals.
Claro. It's just also, it's what you're saying, it's the way in which you do it. It's like, it doesn't mean that you have to be brutally honest all the time. It just means that you have really no need to go ahead and twist your morality just to make other people feel less affected by it, even if in the end it's going to be more hurtful for them.
Yeah, and that's it. It's just it's compounding interest.
Fair enough. Let's go to rule number 4 then. You want to say something else? Okay, rule number 4. Notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated.
Oh my God.
Venezuela?
That's exactly it.
This is always what I think. Bueno, I'm going to say something.
Go ahead.
It's like something that we were always taught when we were little is that where there's a crisis, there's always big opportunities, because usually people are prepared for the normal routine of an economy or a household or whatever you have. But the moment in which normal becomes the exception and the crisis and the misunderstanding becomes the rule.
Venezuela.
Exacto. There will be things that have to be done. And the one who does them first gets the reward, that gets the biggest reward, you know?
Sí, hay una historia de un señor que empezó a comprar todas las baterías Duncan que venían a Caracas, como 5 años antes de que se acabaran las baterías. Y tenía unos galpones llenos de baterías Duncan. Y el día que se acabaron las baterías Duncan, la única persona que tenía baterías Duncan era este señor. Y tenía un monopolio. And he got very rich by just selling them back to Duncan for 3-4 times the price so that people could get batteries.
Sí.
So it's like, but this happens everywhere. Like, where do you see this happening? Where you're like, I see that there's a responsibility that has been abdicated or like left. Do you know anywhere?
So, for example, I don't know if you can really say about responsibility being abdicated, but if you have, let's say you have a war, right, in Ukraine, and your business was absolutely linked to something that has been altered by the value chain or the problems with transportation that you have now.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say that's an abdication of responsibility because it's been blocked by external forces that do not belong to you. But you have two alternatives. It's either you complain about your impossibility to perform your tasks, or you see that now people have other necessities and you can conquer that opportunity over there and maybe even be more successful than you were before.
Oh, yeah. This is also typical of jobs. Like, what he points this out, especially for becoming the person people want hired. If you're a boss, it will probably not be the best thing for the people you work with. Meaning, the people that are at the same level as you or a bit higher than you won't like that you do this. Well, not necessarily, but it's a risk. And it's something like, if you know that your boss isn't doing the midterm analysis of the company and you do it and you send it to your boss will know that you do it. And that is a responsibility that was abdicated by somebody else, and it's an opportunity for you to get a raise. Or if your boss hates the crap out of you and then you realize that, you know, he has this big issue that you somehow have the answer for, or that you can find the answer for, and you give it to them, they will probably like you a lot more. And it's just a nice, interesting fact. When you see things that aren't working, try to see if there's any abdicated responsibility that you can take over.
Okay, let's go to rule number 5 now.
I don't know if we're going to be able to do all the rules.
I think we should do 6.
Okay, I like that.
And then we do it part 2, and then we do the rest of the other 6.
Okay, I love that. So,
do not do what you hate.
Do not do what you hate. You know, I actually, my little sister had made the same observation as Ari the other day. She went into my room and she was like, oh, what do those posters mean? And I sat down and I told her, look, this is the fool, this is this, this is that. This is a picture of an angel. You can show it.
I don't think you can see it, but...
Yeah, it's a picture of an angel, basically, like, in the throes of doing exactly what he wants to do. So, what this is trying to say is something like...
It's something that's obvious if you think about it.
But not like, but we've been taught the opposite our entire lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we've been taught that you have to do things that you hate because they're necessary for life. And it's like, yes.
Until what extent?
Exactly. And it's something like, for example, if you're ever asked to lie in your job, you don't have to do that. Like, you don't, if you have a job or something that like sucks the soul out of you and makes you feel like you're going to die if you keep being there, you don't have to do it. You have the responsibility to find a way out of it. And that's it. It's not as easy as just dropping your responsibilities. It's turning them into things that you like.
I think sometimes it's also easier to do what you hate than to actually take the responsibility to change it for it not to be like that.
One of the things he says is like, okay, you hate your job. And then, yeah, you hate your job. But then you hate opening your resume and seeing how you haven't had the best internships and how you haven't done the most things outside of your work that you could have. And so instead of doing things that will make your resume better, you decide like, oh,
just stay at your job.
You stay at your job. Or you apply for like 2 or 3 jobs and you say like, oh, well, I didn't even try really hard, so it doesn't really matter. And it's like, yeah, you're staying in that pit of nothingness. And it's awful. So it's not only is it don't do what you hate, is have the spirit to get the hell out of there.
And it also has to do with what we said before. It's like sometimes it's more comfortable to just follow the rules, you know? It's like you save yourself the trouble of being against where everybody goes and against having to convince at least someone to go with you, because otherwise you're going to be a fool, you're going to be crazy, and you're going to be the people who others would not support, which in the end is not a comfortable position.
Yeah.
You know?
And it goes perfectly with the next rule,
Which is abandon ideology.
So, ideology is, do you want to define ideology?
Go ahead. You read the book. I think maybe he has a specific explanation of it.
Ideology is any set of beliefs that gives you an automatic answer for everything. So, if you are a Marxist and you see a millionaire, what is he?
He's a bureaucrat who
An
stole your
oppressive
money.
capitalist,
Yeah.
Who's stealing your money and making society bad. And you see a worker in the street and he is,
Fellow human.
a comrade,
Exactly.
And
He's your mate.
What about if you see a Marxist in a capitalist society?
He's crazy. He's a fool. He's going against your money.
Exactly. So ideologies, what they do is that they're useful. They have their utility. I mean, thinking in a Marxist way, or thinking in a capitalist way, or thinking in a realist way, give you their tools. Yeah, they give you a framework to analyze the world. Pero la realidad es que no son las reglas con las que te deberías regir por tu vida. ¿Y qué pasa? Again, it's the same thing about being the fool. It's something like you need to be able... Cuando yo fui a estudiar en la universidad, yo quería estudiar en una universidad privada. Mi papá me agarró y me dijo, no. Yo estudié en un colegio privado toda mi vida, cuando estaba en bachillerato, en el colegio Jefferson, y I loved my school, but my school had a lot of center and right-wing values because we were children of people that were very hardworking and who, even though they are very progressive, they were very, you have to get a job, you have to take responsibility for things in your life, etc. And so I grew up with that. And one of the things my dad told me is, you're going to work in diplomacy, which means that you're going to have to deal with people who don't think what you think.
Very wise.
Very wise. And I ended up at La Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. I love my university, but I study at the Faculty of Philosophy and Letters, which is the most left-leaning place in my university. And it so happens that the students and my friends at university are people who are very much left-leaning in a cultural way. It's not that they have decided that the left is better than the right. They have decided through their life experiences that the people in their country who are left-leaning have their interests more at heart than the people on the right. And that's not... I can't decide for them if that's okay or not. But it has been, like, for example, I had a class where they gave me a documentary about Chavez and the left wing in Latin America, basically telling me how the documentary basically explaining how the left was an amazing movement that did so many good things for the world. And I left Venezuela because of
the leftist movement that does amazing things for the world.
Exactly. And so one of the things that happened was, like, Jordan always says, like, if you have a story and the antagonist is weak, the story's not good. Like, if you're a prince, you want your dragon to be the biggest dragon it can be, so that the story is the most important story possible. So what tends to happen is that in Venezuela, we're taught that
our dragon is the biggest dragon.
No, we're taught that they're stupid. We're taught that left-leaning people are stupid, and that they have no ingenious, and that they got there as a stroke of luck.
But también you're also taught that, like, if there's something you have to fight in your life, it's left wing.
Exactly. Like, we're taught to be we're not taught to be right wing. We're taught to be anti-left.
Yeah.
And the thing is, one of the things that happened to me while watching the documentary was, like, I knew that half of the stuff he was saying was bullshit. But there was that one thing. Which, like...
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
Like, fair enough, I'll give you that. But not only that, it shook everything that anybody had ever told me about the right and left wing in Venezuela. I had read it before in this great book, which is right here, called Del Buen Salvaje, Buen Revolucionario de Carlos Rangel. And it talks a lot about these pre-existing ideas that we have. And it's like, you don't get it. It's just both of you have something that's correct, and you have to understand, and that's the point about ideology. Yeah. If you follow one ideology, you will be missing half the truth. It's the same excuse cuando las elecciones en Estados Unidos que le decían a los trumpistas que eran todos unos fascistas que querían destruir Estados Unidos. You're telling half of your country that they're trying to destroy your country. That's kind of paradoxical, and it's not good for anyone there.
Claro. So the tricky thing about ideology is that, for example, ideology is aligned with your values, right? And values, until a certain extent, make up who you are, right? Your values can be responsibility, hard work, empathy, and you are going to be lean towards a specific ideology, especially because probably those values come from your family, and your family also comes from that same ideology, right? And talking about what we said before of like having your ultimate goddess and thinking about who you want to be and working towards that, usually that person who you want to be is aligned with the values that you have. So oftentimes your ideology is a framework that guides you towards that person who you want to become. But I think also what we're trying to say is that not in every one of the cases your ideology will eye-open or will give you the perspective that you need in order to seize your opportunities to the maximum capacities. And I think for both of us, it's been the same, like coming to a completely different country and facing people who are not like the people who we used to face in Caracas, which also belong to a very specific bubble and, specific, very closed stereotype of, people.
Sí, son gente que tiene su propia burbuja de estereotipo, tal
Exacto.
cual.
So you come into a city, into a university, into a class where people from so many different places, so many different ideologies and ways of seeing life. It teaches you that, one, you're never going to get in life as far as you want if you do not take into account how other people think. So you could forget that people think different than you and be very stubborn about the way you think. But you're never going to be as successful as if you have the will to understand how other people think and how that can be a leverage for you in the future.
Like Peterson says a lot, and I've said this before, no one survives a good conversation, and nobody survives a good book either. O sea, el hecho de que yo haya visto ese video, ese documental, haya cambiado la manera que yo pienso para positivo. O sea, haya hecho que haya afilado el cuchillo de mi crítica hacia lo que pasó en Venezuela y cómo funciona la política en general, significa que hubo una parte de mí que estaba aferrada a esa idea de la izquierda que tuvo que morir.
Y eso también tiene que ver con que it's more comfortable to think like that. So it's more comfortable for us, and it's way easier to just say left is wrong. It's a harder task to take the time to listen and to understand, okay, what does being a leftist mean? And I'm not saying it's better or it's worse. It's just like my dad always says this thing of, you don't have to try to convince other people to think like you. You have to convince yourself that you have to try to understand others.
Yeah, where they're coming from. Bueno, una de las cosas también que creo que podemos cerrar con esto es que personality plays a big role in your political ideology. This book, Snoop talks a lot about this and how an AI could reliably tell if you were from a Democrat or a Republican by looking at the things in your room like 80% of the time, because they talk about your inclinations. If you're a conscientious person and if you're older than, let's say, 35, I don't know the exact age, then you're more likely to be a Republican. But if you are high in agreeableness and high in neuroticism, then you tend to be a Democrat because you are more alert to, for example, a conscientious person who's also a little bit disagreeable will see a person who is asking for money in the street and walk by and be like, get a job, get a job and like find something to do with your life. And the more neuroticism means sensible to negative emotion. So the more neurotic person and the more agreeable person will probably walk by and be like, what do you need? Can I help you? It's just different
voice of seeing,
like and experiencing, like it's worse. It's a different way of experiencing the world. It's just so weird.
But that in the end, like that's where the beauty of it relies. It's like if we're all the same, this is very cliche, but it would not be as fun.
Yeah, what would be the fun of having a partner that just had the same things as you? Like there's in his personality thing, the test, he has this option to mix it with your couple so that you can see where you guys are super compatible and when you're not.
Okay.
And we'll talk in the future about compatibility.
Compatibility.
But one of the things he says is like, there's a point where if you're too separate personally, there's a thing that you're always going to fight about.
Okay.
And it's going to be always more or less in the same category. And you can kind of predict it. Like, if you're really, really committed to that relationship, you can find a way to, like, parse that through. But in general, human beings are 60 to 70% the same or alike. Como que there's enough ground como para que te gusten las cosas. I don't know.
Sí. Y, o sea, it's what you say. It's like, if your partner was the same as you, what would you even talk about? It doesn't... We're so fun in just having a conversation where we both agree. For example, the other day, like, I was talking to my boyfriend, and we found some questions on Anna, and one of the questions was, if you could write a book about something, what would it be? And he told me he would write a book about everything that's wrong in the world. Like, he basically told me everything that people do not want to see, I want to write a book about that. And I was like, yeah, but what's the purpose of your book? Like, why would you write a book like that? And he's like, yeah, because I want people to see the bad. And I kept asking him the question because in the end, what I think where he was trying to get, and we talked about it later, it's like, you want people to have perspective. It's not about just... Because at the beginning, I just felt like if you just wanted to plant a seed of sadness and disappointment and lose hope. But in the end, it's not about that. It's about gaining perspective, because perspective gives you a more critical, acute sense.
Like, he planted targets
Exactly.
for you to, like, shoot at.
And it wasn't really like that. What he was trying to tell me is like, he wanted people to understand that not everything is as pretty as it looks, but we can shift our perspective and our actions in order to make, the way in which we behave more, like, really shift us to where we want to go. Not pretend the bad things are not there, but acknowledge they're there, and knowing they're there, what can you do about it,
Okay. I find that interesting. I did something else too with Marie, but I want to try something with you. Like, what book would you write?
I told him I would write a book about anxiety and how I experience it, because I would like to read that book. It's like I would like to read a book of someone who's similar to me in a certain extent that would make me feel understood. And then he told me, why would you write a book for yourself? Why would you only ask yourself if you like it? And I was like, yeah, if I don't like it, then
why would you write a book for anyone else? Like, you could look at the opposite. Why would you write a book for everybody else?
It was a very interesting conversation. Like, it was very deep.
I would write a book about the relationship between politics, both international and low politics, and personality. I think that would be a very interesting book to write. And then I have this question for you. Like, I did a similar thing with Maria the other day, and I asked her, if you could change anything in the world, what would it be? Like, if you can make it into, like, a utopian world where that didn't happen, what would you change?
Okay, what would you change? Let me think. I need something to think.
Yeah, you go. Come on.
I go? I don't...
Because there's a story behind mine.
There's a story behind yours.
Yeah.
If I think about it, like, lightly, I would say I would take away evil. In the sense of, like, people who just do mean things for mean reasons. A cousin of my dad, he lived in Latin America, and he went to a party. And when he was coming back from the party, his drink got, like, pinched. Spiked. And by the time he got home, like, there was someone home, they called an ambulance, and he spent 2 days in therapy, and he died the day after.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. But the point is, that was just mean. Yeah. If I could take something away from the world, it would definitely be that.
Like, senseless evil.
Yeah.
Okay. This is my explanation, and you're probably, like, after that example, you're probably not gonna like it, but I'm gonna stick, I'm not gonna betray myself. I'm gonna stick to my guns, and I'm gonna say that any way that you change the world will inevitably change it for good and evil in your perspective, in your person. So the world will have the flaws that you have. Mm-hmm. So if you decide to rid all of the world of unnecessary evil, then let's put it this way, to just go in a train of thought. you would create a world that is so easy to live in that you create lazy people that then do evil things, evil unnecessary things out of boredom.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? And that was my point. My girlfriend said that she would take away the sexual
assault,
the
violence.
sexual desire for assault and violence. And I told her, yeah, but that would take, like, what do you think, like, practically would happen in a world like that? Like, if you look at it, it becomes, like, in its extreme, and when you apply it to a whole world, it becomes extreme. It becomes pathological.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think that I have the right to think that there's anything about the world that I could change without making it worse.
It's like when you ask you if there's something about your past that you regret, and what would you change?
And you say nothing because it made me who I am today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same principle. Very interesting.
It was a very good one. This was, let's call it book club, I guess. Book club part 1, Jordan Peterson's Beyond Order.
First 6 rules for life.
Later, the next 6 rules for life.
We hope you enjoyed, and you have to remember that
no one gets away with anything. Remember to listen to us on YouTube, Spotify, Substack, and then Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get this from.
See you next Monday.
Bye.
It was a hell long episode, ¿no?
Pero estuvo burda de bueno. Muy bueno. Really good. Really good.